Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page, as well as my YouTube channel. And it's an opportunity for us to have a wonderful spiritual discussion regarding spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And this is year 7 of Wednesdays with Willa. So there are lots of great past episodes that you can binge watch to your heart's content. I have a lot of folks that tell me that they just love it. They just go into, oh my goodness, they've fallen into the education about those things. And I really appreciate hearing from all of you how much you enjoy the shows. And I have to say, you can click back through the archive videos and even do a search for your favorite guests and topics relating to spiritualism, mediumship, or healing, or all the other great things that we have on this show. And as many of you know, I'm part of the Lilydale Assembly. I've been a registered medium for 22 years now. And so I'm really enjoying my life process. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Lilydale Assembly, it's a very special place at Lilydale, New York. And during the summer, we have a summer season program that runs for about 10 weeks that starts on June 21st. This year, and then we'll run till September 1st. Lots of daily events, message services, healing services, and workshops. And we are delighted to have back with us Dr. Lakara Foster. She will be one of the 2024 workshop presenters this year. And I will link in the post the tickets so that you can go back and go ahead and get registered for the workshops with Dr. Lakara Foster or any of the other workshop presenters for this summer season. And you're definitely going to want to make plans if you're coming for to stay overnight, that you'll want to get in with the hotel or the guest houses that we have here, because things get booked up fast. Also, if you have your favorite medium that you're wanting to get booked in with them now. I know I am booked for the summer season, so you've got to make those plans early, folks. And I wanted to go ahead and introduce our topic today, which is living again after loss. And as I said, we have Dr. Lakara Foster with us today. And she is a medium, a minister, an author, and a spiritual teacher from New Orleans. She's also the star of a popular YouTube web series called The Gift, which is a reality series that follows her life as she shares her gift to reunite people with their departed loved ones. She's also been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, VH1, and Hip Hop's Couples Retreat, which I can only imagine, and the TV one's The Sister Circle. And we're delighted that she could be on the show today to share some very important tips with you about living again after loss. So let's give them a little bit of background about you and your mediumship. And I know you have a book that you can share with folks today too.
Yes, thank you so much. So again, I'm Dr. Lakara Foster. I am a minister and a medium. And so I'm an associate pastor at a church here in Atlanta. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, which I still call home. That is where my parents, my entire family is. And as we spoke a little bit about before we started, mediumship for me began at about age 3. From what I can understand, it's just I became very aware of spirit, and not necessarily having a name for it or an understanding, just this kind of feeling and knowing. I was at a funeral and I saw the body, and of course it was my mother's aunt, my great aunt, who I was very familiar with, but also the presence there, and I could see her and I could feel her there at the funeral. And of course my thought was like, oh, this is cool, like you get to attend your own funeral when you die, right? Like, who doesn't want to do that? I know as a Virgo, I'm going to be at my own funeral, making sure people do what I have asked them to do, right?
So, yes, yeah. Directing traffic, seeing if all your favorite people are there.
Listen, and if they're on time too. So
it all counts.
Yes. And so I began doing this work about 30 years ago, the work of helping people through mediumship and helping them to heal their grief. My background and one of my degrees is in therapy, is in counseling. And so I have found that I have been able to kind of integrate all of these modalities with helping people. And so In January, I published my fourth book, and the book is called The Morning After. It is healing grief through mediumship and learning to live and love again after loss. And what I tell people, it is a guide, it is a tool that people can use. There's activities and workshop ideas here to really kind of help people move from a place of just move through grief, right? And I tell people, we understand the stages of grief. A lot of times we don't understand that grief it's a cycle, right? So some people think, oh, I'm going to go through the anger stage and then the bargaining stage, and then I'll get to the acceptance stage. And it's like, nope, it may not happen that way. And also, I work with, when I'm working with people, what I found lately is that a lot of people, feel like there's a timeline to grief, right? They'll say, oh, my friends are saying it's been 2 years since my husband died. I should be over it. I'm like, first of all, that is so insensitive, right? Like, I don't even understand how people can even say something like that out of their mouth, but apparently people do. And so I tell people, like, there's not necessarily a timeline for grief, but there are ways and there are tips that can help us through our grief. And what I've also found is just like in our culture, um, we find in some cultures that there are like very specific rituals and ways that people work through grief or heal through grief. And I don't know that we kind of have that in our American culture, right? Like you see some cultures, the husband dies and the woman becomes a widow and she's allowed to wear black for a year so that people can know that she's in mourning. We don't have that, right? Like, so and so, I tell people, like, you gotta take your time. You gotta, there are different things and so that's what we're here to do today, to kind of give some tips on how to live again after loss.
Beautiful. Yes, it's so true because you can't necessarily rush that process. I
Yeah.
think there is a fine balance between when people fall into a state of rumination, where they're just kind of on that VCR loop of the pain and the overthinking, or maybe going into the numbness and people become very raw during those
Yeah.
stages. And if somebody says the least little thing, you're like, you
Yeah.
did not just say that to me.
Yes.
Like, I'm
Yes.
hurting
Yes.
here. And so there's an arc that happens as you said. And people don't necessarily give time the morning that they
Yeah.
need. They're not given that time. And I think things are changing though, as people become more educated
Yes.
about this. But it certainly does help, as we know through mediumship, that people can know that love never dies and that they can still connect with their loved ones in spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the thing. That is one of the things I love most about doing the work is kind of people getting that aha moment. So I had a client yesterday, and she called and we were able to connect with her departed brother. And it was so interesting because the brother says, you were supposed to come and see me a while ago. And she starts laughing and she says, yes, she said, I was my daughter told me about this 2 years ago. She said, but I wasn't ready, and she said, and now I'm ready. And so I'm finding that people are learning more and hearing more and educating themselves more and knowing, like, oh, it's not a spooky thing. It's not a bad thing. I also think, like, being an African American medium, I see a lot of African Americans, and so for a lot of people, who grew up in the church, it's like, oh, well, the Bible says this, and you're not supposed to do this, and you're not. And so it is taking them a long time to kind of come around to the idea of, like, no, it really is okay if I connect with my loved ones. I'm supposed to connect with my loved ones, and that they're not. I tell people I don't talk to the dead. I tell people all we are energy, right? There's no such thing as dead, right? Of course, the physical body departs, but the energy of us continues on, right? And so when we feel them, or we smell them, or we think we hear them, or they come through a song, or through or through the butterfly, through the ladybug, we know, like, oh wow, like they're still a part of this journey with us.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily about converting anyone. They have to
Yeah,
come to it in their own time. But
yeah,
then, I think it's also about what passages they have been reading in the Bible,
yeah,
because the Mount of Transfiguration, Jesus, what does he do? He talks to Moses and
yeah,
Elijah.
yeah.
Hello, and that's spirit contact.
Yes, absolutely. And I always point to that scripture. And I said, even in my doctoral work, I use that as a reference to talk about, yeah, like if we're gonna use the Bible, right? If we're gonna use that, like let's look at it in this context. And to know, like, yeah, you can use the Bible for or against anything you decide you want to. So, but yeah.
It's an incredible journey that people are on in their own spiritual development
Yes.
and also in their mediumship development. And some people start to discover that they are their own best mediums. But
Mhm.
it's nice to know that we also can have other people that help us along the way that, maybe have a bit more um, ability to really translate what spirit's offering and
Mhm.
to bring the healing and the family reunion, right?
Yes.
That is
That's
is
so beautiful. And
yeah,
that's exactly what happened yesterday during the video. I mean, it happens a lot, but yesterday was kind of like her mother came through, her brother came through, her sister came through, like all these different, and each are coming through with a very specific message so that they know. I always tell people, for me, I feel like spirit is like, you got to give them something that you can't Google, right? I'm like, not that we
right,
would, but it's
right.
just like, and I tell the woman, I say, your brother brings up, I said he's speaking about the person with the dual, like the dual degree, right? And like graduated with the dual degree. And she's like, no, no, I don't. And the daughter is like in the background. She's like, Mom, like I have a dual degree. I was like, I didn't even know the daughter was there in the background. She's like, you have a dual degree? She's like, yes, in psychology and sociology. And the mom was like, oh, no.
Someone wasn't paying attention.
I
But
know.
but the other part of it is sometimes people are a little bit like the deer caught in the headlights
Yeah, yeah,
during
yeah,
during a session or during a message because it's like they're not able to necessarily process it in the moment. And
yeah,
then later on, they're like, oh, divot in the forehead. I
yeah.
should have remembered about such and such.
Oh, I
And
get I get emails and text messages all the time. I'm sure you do too. Like, oh, when you talked about the red this, like this is I remember now. So I'm like, yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious. You just kind of don't take it personally that they
Oh,
might not
absolutely, yeah.
understand or connect it in the moment. But then when they verify it with someone later on, or in this case, in the moment, the
Yes.
daughter,
She's like, yeah,
and
my daughter is like off screen. I was like, oh, I didn't even know. Like her daughter, I was like, no, I was like, but also like your brother's letting you know, like, I'm in the room with you all. Like I can see, and this is why I'm bringing it up because my energy is in the room with you all.
It's so
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah.
so beautiful. And do you find that once people understand that that is happening, I know I do. Do you find that all of a sudden they're more open to the signs of spirit? They're
Oh,
more open. It
absolutely.
just starts to ignite this fire in their soul to
Absolutely. And I think that that's a part of our mission and our goals as mediums, right? Is to, people will say, well, well, can I come back to you? And I often say you don't need to, right? Because to me, it's like as a medium, I want to give you the evidence, right? That spirit lives on. And these are ways that we can look for the evidence that spirit lives on. And so I want to teach people, even if we have a 30-minute session, I'll say, yeah, like your grandmother's bringing up the butterfly that landed on the rail when you were sitting there, right? And they're like, oh my God, like that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And your grandmother is saying, you don't limit it, my energy to the butterfly, but this is one way that I can come through. And so then people know, like, yeah, that there's an infinite number of ways that spirit can come through. I have this thing. So when I do the morning announcements at church on Sunday, and I always end with a story that speaks to, if you look for God in everything, you'll find God in everything. And so for me, it's just like, yeah, we can find God in the trees, we can find spirit in the butterflies, we can find spirit, in all of these different places for sure. But it's
and
teaching people, like, you got to look for it too. You got to be tapped into it.
yeah, you do have to be tapping into it sometimes in a very purposeful way. I mean, there are things that, and this is another show in itself, that help a person to prepare energetically for
Yeah.
that.
Mm.
Spirit doesn't necessarily show up like a burning bush
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a wine ball, and that says there's some more subtle things because they're having to work with what they have, and they're also learning and growing on the other side, and they
Yeah.
don't necessarily cross over to the other side and know
Yeah.
what they're doing. There's a learning curve for them too. But I like what you said earlier that you're like, you don't need to come back to me. You can do this yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm talking myself out of a job
Yeah, that's what my friends are always like. You don't want them to come back. I'm like, well, because what'll end up happening is, and I'll tell them like, you come back for another service, right? Like you come back for a psychic service because then you know who. Like I'll tell people when I'm doing a psychic reading, I'm not tapped into who's giving me the information, but it's someone on your spirit team. So if we connect to your grandmother, in a mediumship reading or your uncle or something, and grandma may be leading the spirit team, and that's who's giving us information in the psychic reading, because maybe you want to know about love or romance or career or whatever the case is, because your spirit team wants to help you with that too, right? And so I always say, like, you can book another service, just I'm going to teach you like how to find and look for them um through the energy and how they want to present themselves to you. So I would say necessarily, like, you don't have to call me back for another medium reading, because your people are here. They're here.
And for me, I have a waiting policy that people wait at least 6 months before having another reading with me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's like a distancing, but it's also because we don't want them to be addicted
Yeah.
to
That. Yeah.
the feedback from spirit about their lives. If they're weighing
Yeah.
in people or situations, we want to empower clients, empower people so that they can really start to engage their own free will and
Yeah. That's good.
work forward in their lives. And so we don't want to build a dependency on
Yeah, absolutely.
audience
Because
or,
I've seen
you know,
people, like I've seen
not
people,
right.
a guy called me and he's like, that year he had spent like $20,000 seeing mediums and stuff. And I told him, because when he first called, I said, this is the last reading you're going to have for a couple of years. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, your spirit guides are saying, don't come for another reading. I said, not with me. He's like, this is my first reading with you. I was like, I don't care. Right. Like, I was like, and he's like, so he goes to tell me, like, he spent all this money and stuff. And I was like, that's so unnecessary.
Yes, it really has to be a person engaging with that free will, who really listening to their own soul and
Yeah.
connection with the divine and making their decisions accordingly. And it should never be about what the peanut gallery has to say. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes to some extent, it's nice to know, oh, my mom does see that I'm getting married, or my
Yeah.
dad is so excited that I finally finished up with that degree, or
Yeah.
my grandma says you're going to be a great mom, because
Yeah.
such and such, or we see that you're struggling with your health, but we're right
Yeah.
here. And so there's that reassurance. So when people are really struggling with grief, they're trying to figure out a new normal. Back
Yeah.
to our topic of living again after loss. And I'm so glad that you're not trying to promote the dependency, just like, we work
Yeah. Absolutely.
together,
Yeah.
but also that recognition that there there's that the habit of a person. There's the grief they have about the person, and
Hmm.
the loss of them. But then there's also the loss of the habit of them.
That's good.
Every
Yeah.
day
The
doing
calling. Yeah.
what I used to do for them, or what we
Hmm.
used to do together. And so there's I would think there's a big relearning how to be without them. That is,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell people, because again, my background is in therapy, right? So I'll tell people, you know, the reading will give you the evidence that your loved ones are still with us, right? In the spirit. Therapy will then teach you, but how do I live without them in the physical? So I always say, after you get your reading, if you're not in therapy, I would suggest that you go to therapy. And then I also have therapists that will send their clients to me. So there's been like a great kind of intersection between the two disciplines, and working together and getting people what they need. Because I would say, I believe that there's layers to healing. I believe that you can have your faith, of course. I believe in therapy for sure. And then, of course, I believe in connecting with spirit through mediumship as well. So I believe that there's layers to it.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Having those different resources, and developing your own strong connection with God. That's going
Yeah.
back to your spiritual foundations of and principles of living, really do help you to expand and move past some of the hurt that it
Yeah.
has. But the therapy is also an integral part. And then I've had people say, I've been in therapy for years, and this reading did more for me
Same thing. Same here. Yeah,
in
absolutely.
all those years. And but it
Yeah.
because all of a sudden there's a shift
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
happens
They
in
have the evidence. They have the evidence. It's like, yeah, I know what I believe in my faith, or I think I know what I believe in my faith, right? And I know this is what the therapist says, and I have these tools. But when a medium gives them something, it's like this indisputable evidence. Literally, as soon as the lady called yesterday, I said to her, actually before she called, because she was taking forever to like log in on the Zoom. And I'm like, just waiting, right? And Spirit starts talking to me, and I don't know if you can see this, right? But this is me scribbling like this is how I do this, right? I don't know like your process.
oh, there's a little
But
bit of blur.
yeah, so I'm like sitting there and I write down Harold and something. And as soon as she gets on, I said, your mother's coming through. She said, yes. I said, there's also a male that's coming through. I said, this energy feels like a father figure, maybe. I said, or some like connected. She said, it was my brother, but he was like a father figure. I said, okay. I said, well, who's Harold? And she's like, that's my brother. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I was like, yeah, he started talking to me like immediately before, before you got online, like he started talking to me immediately. And I said like, and is he a police officer? And she's just like, oh, like just mind blown. Right. And because it's like Spirit is giving the evidence and it's just saying like, I don't know you. I don't know your family. I don't know anything about you. And like, she's really kind of like, really settled by the end of the reading, the end of the 30 minutes. Like she's very settled in like, this is amazing. There's no way you could have known this, or this. And now I really believe and I know that my loved ones are here with me. And now I know that I don't have to grieve as hard as I was grieving. Right. So I think like that is the thing that mediumship does, is just gives the evidence. I always say, even as a pastor, right? I said I remember having this conversation with God and saying, God, okay, God, this is tricky, right? Like this, people are gonna have a hard time reconciling this. So you gotta give me what you need to give me for this. And God said, I promise people eternal life. How will they know that I've kept the promise if the if the medium doesn't demonstrate the gift? That is what we do as mediums. We demonstrate the gift of eternal life.
Yeah, we really
And we
do
provide
support a
evidence.
lot of
Yeah.
the world religions in
Yeah.
uh, helping people in the here and the now, not just take it on faith, but they move into a space of knowing.
Knowing. That's it. That's it. Yes. Not even believing, because believing still kind of leaves room for doubt, right? But the
Exactly.
knowing of there's no way you could know this. So now that you know this, I know this to be true now.
Yeah. And it's so much fun to help people have those recognitions and
Yes.
the delight. And I have to say, it's a bit of a vicarious thrill as a
Yeah.
medium, like when you can feel the love and
Yeah.
everything's just gelling with all of that.
Yeah.
Feel how
Yeah.
much
Do you cry a lot? Because I cry sometimes. Like,
it's hard not to, right?
I
It's
know.
like, especially because I don't know you, but I'm a feeler. So I
Yeah.
feel stuff, the physical and the emotions, and almost as if they were my own. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful to be able to link people in that way. And it
Yeah.
kind of busts through some of that sadness. So what
Yeah.
are some other tips you'd like to share with people today about living again after loss?
Yeah. So the first thing I tell people, or tell my clients or people that I'm talking to, one is to allow themselves to grieve, right? To give themselves permission to feel what they are feeling, that there's no timeline for the grief, that there's no, A, B, C, D, check off the boxes for the grief, but really give themselves an opportunity to feel, whether it's the sadness or the anger. But I always tell them too, what Spirit has shown me is that they're in heaven, right? They're in heaven, but that we can also experience heaven while we're here. And that is the thing, that it's like, you don't have to die to get to heaven. And that is kind of the lesson, to say, hey, we realize you're going to be sad. We realize you're going to miss us, but you're also going to join us, right? That's inevitable. But until that time comes, really enjoy this human experience that you're having. Don't cut the human experience short by, spending years. I always think like grief is a thief. And grief can steal years and years and years and decades of your life. And that is not like, that is what their loved ones come to tell me, to tell them, like, that is not what we want. Give yourself permission to feel, but don't get stuck in the grief.
That's right. Don't get stuck. They want us to live gloriously and
Yes.
joyously. And when we do that, when we're in a joyful, centered place, we are more likely to be able to feel spirit than
Yeah.
if we are upset or numbed out. It's just if we're in that what I call the porcupine fortress.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Nobody's getting through. I'm mad. This is
Yeah.
horrible. Whatever it is, and it's really hard to then translate joy into your life and into the sequence of this. But it really is, like you said, heaven is here too. It's a state of consciousness
Yes.
that we are choosing
Mm-hmm.
through our words and our deeds. And we really want those actions to reflect living as a soul. And
Yes.
so I always tell people, I frequently tell people, if this was the other way around, what would you be saying to your loved one who was here on the earth plane? What would you want for them? Do you want them to
Yes.
go and be miserable and, just be a puddle on the floor? Or would
Yeah.
you want them to enter into a true life? And to
Yes.
value their life means to value your own.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the second thing I would tell people is to seek support. Right, seek support. To I think a lot of times, especially in grief, people tend to want to isolate. Right, they believe that no one feels like this. Right, nobody knows what it's like to lose a mother or a grandmother or a brother. And no, there are absolutely people who have lost all types of loved ones, and so there are people that can support you on this journey. There are I have found that, interestingly enough, I feel like over the last year, I've worked with a lot of women who've lost their husbands, and I've worked with a lot of parents who have lost children. And so I'm always kind of referring them, like I'll find resources on Facebook, I'll find resources in the community, to be able, or, even kind of sending them to therapy to say, even if you don't see an individual or seek therapy individually for yourself, maybe go to group therapy, because this then shows you like, wow, there are other mothers who know what this feels like. Because when you get around people who don't, then of course people can say kind of insensitive things, not meaning to say insensitive things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of just encouraging people to seek support or seek, people who've maybe been through the same thing, and see, how are they able to cope with this? How are they able to get over this? How are they, and not get over it, but you understand what I'm saying? Like how are they able to live again after this monumental loss?
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more that
Yeah.
having that support is so essential, especially for the people that say, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fine. And they say that they were so strong, right?
Yeah.
So strong through it. And then they're wondering, where did everybody go? Well,
Yeah.
I said
You
you were
told everyone you were fine, right?
what do you expect? Like, wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to get to that place where I'm not fine. I need help. And
Yeah.
it might not always be especially if you're used to being a strong person and
Yeah.
you're the one that always fixes things or ends up
Yeah.
on your plate, then you have to seek the support, not necessarily with your own family or friend circle, but as Lakara is saying, as you're
Yeah.
saying, expand that circle that
Mm-hmm.
include the support groups, the therapy, the recognition that other people are moving through their journey as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then I would tell people to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about self-care a lot, but I think soul care is important too. Right. Like, with self-care, people kind of point to, oh, get the massage, get the nails done, well, our souls need taken care of too. Right. And so taking care of ourselves from a holistic perspective. And what does that mean to take care of your soul? Maybe that looks like increasing your faith. Maybe that looks like going to church. Maybe that looks like seeking out some type of other spiritual support, or reading books, or connecting with spirit, right? Whatever that looks like for someone, taking care of yourself.
Yes, I think that's a
Mhm.
beautiful one. And it's about taking in spiritual food. And
Yeah,
as I said, it can be a matter of attending church. It could be
yeah,
reading devotionals. It can be just being in nature, or being in that prayerful meditation space where
yes,
you're allowing yourself the opportunity to connect with your higher self and with the divine. And
Yes.
we have to take in more spiritual food than we give out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We can't let our cups, like, we let our cups run empty, right? We're just pour, and we're not being poured into. And we find ourselves depleted. Yeah, we take care of everyone else and then we find ourselves depleted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember one of my this lady was giving me a tarot reading one day, and she says, if you're giving, she says, if you give until, how did she put it? If you give it, like, basically, if you give until your cup is empty, like you're giving out of ego, you're not giving out of love. And I was like, huh, okay. So this, because if you give out of love, then your cup is always going to be full. But if you're giving out of ego, like, you're going to find yourself depleted, you know? And so being careful that we're not just giving, like, we're not being martyrs, because that's not what our loved ones want for us.
That's right. That martyrdom kind of gives a person like a sense of superiority to some
Hmm.
extent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of I know how to do this, and by sharing with another person and being vulnerable with them, they don't get to be the superior person anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Because we see it as like weakness, right? Instead of seeing the strength and vulnerability, we see it like, oh, if you're vulnerable, then that means that you couldn't hack it, you couldn't take it. Like, that's not a requirement for our humanity.
No, no, it's
That's
not.
not.
I think we're not trying to encourage people to trumpet all their issues everywhere.
Yeah.
There is a balancing act that happens with all of this.
Yes.
Of how to handle this in a classy way, or
Yeah.
don't feel classy with it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
some of these tips are really important for people to embrace and know that you may have to try again and
Yeah.
try again with when it comes to that self-care, when it comes to how you may be needing to wean certain people from you during
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Absolutely. 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 Woo. And then finally,
Yes.
my last tip is I tell people to honor their loved ones, right? Find ways to honor their loved ones, whatever that looks like for them. Some people may visit the graveyard. Some people may bring flowers on Mother's Day or birthdays or do balloon releases. I have an altar, and on my altar, I have several loved ones' pictures and things that they may like on there. And that is the way that I honor my loved ones. So finding ways, or I had a family that lost a father, and it was very, several small children, and the anniversary of the passing was coming up, and she says, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, let the children decide, right? Like, you don't have to figure it out. Let them decide how they want to honor their dad on their dad's anniversary of his passing. And she called me like a week after, and she said, they wanted to play baseball because that's what the dad did. And I just thought that was so sweet, right? But the children figured it out, like, hey, like, this is what we believe that dad would have wanted. And even, like, not underestimating the youth, the children when it comes to this, right? But yeah, figuring out ways to honor our loved ones, I believe, is a great tip to love again after loss, or live again after loss.
Absolutely. When we are able to be in that perspective of that energetic framework of their frequency. Sometimes by doing like the baseball in this situation,
Yeah,
that's his vibrational frequency. That's what he's on.
yeah.
So they were on his radio station
There you go.
and
Absolutely.
wanted to attune themselves on that day
Yes.
in every way
Yes.
they could to draw him in. And I think that's very, very useful. And also sometimes the honoring of a person means that you do something in their name,
Yes.
in a way of honoring them that is doing good for other people. So
Yes. That's good.
that love is paying it forward to someone else who may be in need or maybe needing support. And it can come in an individual support, a community support, a charity support. It can happen in all of those kinds of ways that feel right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's so good. Yes.
And
Yes.
people sometimes are racking their brains. They'll say, I don't know what to do for,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
And
and sometimes it may be like do nothing, maybe honor them in silence, right?
right,
I think that that's the thing, is like, I don't think that they're, we don't have to keep busy.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point. Because so many people are trying to fill it with the action, and sometimes they just have to let it sit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let
Absolutely.
it sit. And there's a beauty to letting it sit. I think, for so many people, the thoughts become overwhelming.
Hmm.
That of I need to do this, I need to do that. There's the pressing need. And sometimes
Yeah.
all they do is maybe go sit on a bench somewhere
Just be, just be.
and
Just
relax.
be.
Well,
Yeah.
this is great. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with folks today about living again after loss? And because I do have a question for you.
Yes, I would just say really just to be patient with ourselves, right? That all of this is a process. And a lot of times when we lose someone, it could be the first experience that we've had, right? In losing a sibling, right? Or losing a child, or losing, or losing someone very close to us. And so then we don't know how to navigate that loss. And so it's very important for us to just be patient in the journey, be patient with ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another aspect of that, and it kind of speaks to the idea of the support on one little level, and also wanting to build for the future. I think
Mhm.
there's a place for allowing other people into our lives,
Mm,
right?
that's
Be
good.
they
That's good. Yeah.
friendships. Let's say your best friend died and you're thinking there's no one else, or a spouse has passed,
Hmm.
or a
Hmm.
child. There are other ways that you can show up as a friend and as a partner or companion,
Yes.
and also in that role of a parent too.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can mother and nurture, or father and nurture other people through their lives. So part of honoring a person can be
Yes.
about saying, I see that love, that great love I have for them, I need to extend that hand in another form to
Yes.
another person.
That's good.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
be
that's
able
good.
to see that forward, that the love carries on, but in a different format.
Yes. Yes. And the energy of it, that we
Yeah,
still have a very present energy that we can contribute and pass on for sure.
that's right. Because that love never dies. Another
Yeah.
aspect of it is that once you know what love tastes like, you'll be
Yeah.
able to recognize it again.
That's good. That's good. I
And
love that.
it's something that I really believe very strongly in, that it's not about replicating that with another person
Mm,
per se. It's
yeah.
about exploring that avenue of how to be loving with others, so that we're not
Mm,
cutting ourselves off from that experience just because we may have had what we envision as the ultimate.
yeah. No,
That
I agree
that
wholeheartedly.
we can be in that part of really living again and thriving ultimately, and helping other people to live and thrive, and know that we can all unite together for that great purpose if we choose.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that that's the point of it all,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
it is very, very special. Oh, well, I appreciate you being here with us today, and we're really looking forward to you being here this summer. I know, as far as the dates you all want to put on your calendar, it would be August 2nd, August 3rd, and August 4th.
Yes.
Lakara is going to be here teaching workshops in Lilydale. We have the morning after healing mediumship through grief. We have the Lakara and the afterlife, which are spirit messages. So you actually be doing the spirit messages for people, so they can,
Yes.
maybe if they're lucky, message. And then the other one is mediumship and symbolism, unlocking that
Yes.
language, because there is
Hmm.
that language with spirit of utilizing those symbols. So a lot of great workshops that you'll be here for this
Yes.
summer.
I'm so
That
excited.
this will be linked in the post, so people can go ahead and get registered for your classes and all the other classes that are coming to Lilydale this summer. And
Yes.
you can also reach out to Lakara on her website, which is lakarawiththegift.com.
.com. Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here today, and we'll have another great show for you next week. So please tune in. Another great guest. We'll have Richard Stuttle, and he is a British medium who is a spirit artist. So we're going to explore that side of things next week. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.